So this is going to be a Castle Wars guide on score versus defense. So score versus defense is a competitive mode for 4v4 and lower games. So what happens in a score versus defense is you have two teams, team one and team two. The game is cut into two halves. So you actually play two games. The first game, team one will score and team two will def. And then at the halfway point, which is the next, like when that game ends, the next they'll switch sides. Team two will score, and team one will def. And the team who scores the most flags out of the, like half where they're scoring wins. So the next thing that you need to know after you understand the basic part that it's cut in half and there's scorers versus defenders and they switch off is that defenders are always in Saradomin base when they defend in SVD, and scorers are in Zamorak. Zamorak base is where scorers are. So uh, the other thing is there is two mage defs and one PK on defense, and there's three scorers scoring. The next part is that there will be one third mage, one PK, and one ahead mage on defense, which is like the positioning part of the roles. So, yeah, that's the roles. Now, next thing would be to explain the rules. So, the rules are for defense, for mages, the rules. You can only have like you're trying to get 100 mage attack. That's like your cap for mage attack in these to balance it. So if you have like 101 or 102, that's fine, but no more than 102 is what you want. The next thing is that some people don't like ancestral and they turn it off, but it's optional. So depending on who you're playing with, and you're not allowed to use any weapons that venom. So venoming weapons is not allowed. Uncharged toxic staff is fine, like this. Everybody uses this. As long as you don't put scales in it, it's fine. Kodai is off, and ZGS is off for mages. The next thing would be the PK defing rules. So the PK def rules: no max range and no max melee. That's basically the rules. You're not allowed to use max range and melee. So I'll show you a PK defing setup later in the video that makes it so that you don't cheat. And it's the best PK defing setup you can wear like all the time, pretty much. So you don't really have to worry about it too much. Just no Arma and no full bandos is basically the idea, right? Um, the next thing would be the scorers rules. So scorers can't hit anyone. You're not allowed to attack anyone or do damage to anyone in any way. So like no spears, no ZGS, no damaging people. So what you do when you're scoring is you turn your player attack options to hidden. Yeah, for sure, every single time. The next thing is that scorers, and for this guide, for purposes of this guide, I'm only going to be talking about 3 versus 3s. So because it's by far the most common game mode you'll play in SVD. So scorers only get one humidify, which means that you have one scorer that's on lunars that has humidify that can refill their buckets without going to the tap, and you're only allowed to pick one guy to do it for your team. So like team one will pick a humidify, and then when they switch sides and team two is scoring, team two will pick a humidify. And that's the general idea for those rules. Okay, now that I'm double logged on my noob account, we're gonna start the rest of the guide. So the next part of the guide is going to be all of the gear setups for like the typical gear setups you'd want to wear in an SVD depending on your role. So this is the PK defing setup. The PK defing setup is Well, actually, you need tinderbox as well, right? You bring a tinderbox into the game with you. So this is like the PKDFing setup that I use. It's a typical setup. You use pre-pot 1 stamina, and then you have these pre-pots for divine, super combat, and ranging. Bring a ZGS, always the ZGS. It's the best spec weapon. 3 of these. You can bring 2 if you flick your prayer, but most people are too lazy, so I put 3. And then you have 1 pot so that you have 20 minutes worth of potion, right? And then you have a stamina pot for when you're running around. If you have low agility or you're like not good at managing your run, you could bring a second one. And then this is the gear, right? So every single gear setup, you're going to have a Castle Wars brace on when you start the game. Increases your damage and accuracy against flag holders and increases the amount your bandages heal. So you're always going to have this on at the start. And once the game starts, you're going to put your gloves on, you're going to drop it, right? But make sure that it's on until the game starts. Like once you're inside the spawn room and after the game starts, that's when you drop it, right? Or otherwise it won't use a charge. The rest of the gear setup is basically just Corils with maximum accuracy for your God Sword and maximum range for your crossbow. And then you can use amulet switches between an Anguish and a Torture if you want, but I really don't think it's worth bothering. But you can. I just use Fury. Okay, so back now after I pulled everything out of the bank. This is the typical mage defing setup. So you have key items, Brimstone Ring, Occult, Uncharged, Toxic Staff, or like Staff of the Dead, Staff of Light. And you have a Torn Brace, that's a key item. Always you're going to have your Castle Wars Brace before the game starts. I take a Blessing for Prayer bonus. And then you're going to have your melee switch, which is Bandos, God Swords, your best gloves, and your best amulet. So Ferocious Gloves and a Torture are best in slot. And the best God Sword to spec with is BGS. It's always been BGS because the defense reduction is really good. Usually you bring 4 super restores unless you have like really low prayer level, then maybe you bring 5. And then usually you bring 2 stamina pots. If you're third mage, you can get away with 1 stamina pot. You bring 1 divine super combat and pre-pots for like the start of the game, obviously. And you need an imbued heart because if you don't have one of these, your cast rate's going to be like really bad. You can use it every time you die to put your mage to 109, right? And you need a rune pouch with ice barrage in it, obviously. So next thing, yeah, and this is with the tormented brace on is 101. So the idea is to keep it like really close to 100, like 100, 99, 98, 102, 101, something like that. So this is a typical scoring setup that I just pulled out of my bank. It is basically just max mage defense, max mage defense with Barrow's gloves, pretty much. You bring 2 super defense pots because you don't want divine ones because they damage you. So if you want it, yeah, you just don't want that. And then you bring these for pre-pots so you don't like need to waste bandages for run on the first rush, and you don't efficient with your inventory space. 3 of these is the most you'll ever need. Imbued heart, you definitely need it when you score, just like you need it when you mage. And the rune pouch is optional. If you are the humidify for your team, like I said before, every team gets 1. If you're the humidify, you can put humidify runes in your rune pouch, obviously, and you go on lunars. But if you're not the humidify, you can bank your rune pouch. If you are the humidify, optionally, you can use third age van braces. I wouldn't use them otherwise because they're not worth the extra 2 mage def over the defense of the Barrow's gloves unless you're the humidify. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about in an SVD game, now that my noob account is over here and everything, is that you want to know how to set up the Ceridome base, or like what a full set Ceridome base looks like. And this is what it looks like. You don't have to do the fancy way that I set it up in the basics guide or anything. You just know that this is how it looks, right? So the next thing we're going to talk about is pre-queuing actions. So every time that you click something in like regards to a barricade, it pre-queues an action. So like for instance, if on this account I click to run over here, and on this account I blow this barricade up, I will run. Yeah, see, like I ran and I didn't even click anything on the other screen. It pre-queues my movement. So the reason that this is important, and this works for like Ice Barrage and anything like that, the reason that this is important is because it makes it so that when you have no pit over somebody, like when somebody pids you, you can't beat them to the first Cade like I explained in the last video, right? Because they will click it on the same 600 millisecond interval tick as you, and they will just get pit over you, and your click won't register. So what you do is, if there's a scorer here running up to blow this barricade up, right, you click to tin this, and then as soon as they blow up this barricade, it instantly pre-queues and tins. See how it instantly goes on fire the instant the game registers that this Cade is gone? That's the idea. And in order to understand this better, how you'd use this, because scorers can switch lanes and stuff too, right? You want to know that you can, if the Cades look like this, if it's a four-way set, you can click your tinderbox on this, and it pre-queues on these, right? So if the scorer comes up and tries to do something like, I'll go grab more explodes on this account, and then on this account I will reset it. Okay, so if the scorer comes up and tries to do something where they try to switch lanes, so if they come up and try to do something like like this, right, and they try to swap over, now they can set a Cade under them when they get over here if you're not fast, but what you can do is you can click to tin this barricade when they blow the first one up, this one that I'm whacking, when they blow up this first one right here that I'm about to blow up on this account. If you click to tin this one when they run to this one, when this one blows up, you'll instantly light this one on fire, right? And then when they switch over into this lane, you can instantly click this one with your tinderbox. And then when they switch over here and they blow this one up, then you'll instantly light this one on fire. So stuff like that is stuff you'll get used to the more you play SVD, but it's an important mechanic that needs to be talked about before we talk about the rest of SVD, because yeah, you need to know about that when you're going to play in a full set spawn for all the roles, defense and scoring. So now that the very basic stuff like pre-queued actions is done, we're going to talk about stuff like we're going to talk about role specific stuff. So the idea in 3v3, first I'm going to talk about defense. The idea on defense in a 3v3 is you have one third mage. So the third mage, his job is to stick with the flag or stick with the scorers that are closest to the flag. So you stay on the scorers that are closest to your flag. So if they're going to take your flag, you want to like camp them until they get up to your flag, and then once they take your flag, you want to run with them. And the idea is that you try to stay with them or stay near them to cast them, and then you try to grab flag passes if they pass to their teammates. You try to grab flag passes to save the flag. The next, and that's pretty much third mage in a nutshell, basically. And the next thing that I have to mention is that since scorers can't kill you, it's auto safe. You can't just like hold your flag off the rocks. I should mention that in rules. Actually, I'll go back and mention that in rules. I'll put a black screen notice. Next thing that we're going to talk about is the ahead mage and the PK. So the PK basically, what he does is he stays a floor in front of the scorers. So if you have your, like, let's say this account is the scorer, if your scorer is over here, if you're PKing, you want to be kind of like, you kind of want to be like over here, back here. Maybe you want to like tin these, for instance, and when they fall over, if this guy's not frozen, then you set this, and then you go up, right, and then you run over here, and you stay ahead always, like a floor or a half a floor at least, bare minimum ahead. And then once they grab the flag, the difference is once they grab the flag, you always stay a full floor ahead. So if there are like if you're playing this competitively, that is. So like if this account is up here, grabbing my flag, right? Let's say he grabs the flag. As soon as this flag gets taken, the PK will set this staircade and they will go down to spawn and get ready to tin spawn. And then they'll go like this, and then this secondary account right here will come down and they'll click to blow this up, right? And then as soon as they do that, your mage up there will call to you, you'll start tending, and then when you're out of cades or you don't think you can tend anymore or stall any longer, you set this cade, right? Then you go down. The idea is that you're always in front of him. So what most PKs will do at this point, because the games are really casual at the moment for 3v3, nobody really takes them super seriously. They will just like hit you, or they'll just like run to stalk or something. What most what a good PK will do if they're really trying to play competitively is they will run out big doors when you're coming down to ground before you get down, and they will run to the bridge with the ZGS, right? Or they will sit at the big doors. If you go under, they'll sit at the big doors, and if you don't go under and you keep running at them, they'll just run to the bridge, right? And the idea behind that is they can cade the bridge really easily, and what this allows is your ahead mage will be ahead, and he is going to be watching under while you watch the bridge, because most people don't understand that if the scorers are smart and they set a guy at mid, the ahead mage can't watch under in the bridge at the same time without just getting caded out. It's just not a thing that he can actually do. And people expect way too much out of their ahead mage when they play these. So, yeah. But if the PK runs to the bridge, the PK can cover the bridge with the ZGS and the remaining cades that he has, and the ahead mage can watch under. And then ideally, they can't score if you play it right and they don't get in front of you. Now, the next thing is the head mage, right? So a head mage is similar to PKDF, except for the difference is you're going to have these explosive potions, a lot more of them, and you are going to be 2 floors ahead all the time. So the idea is like if they're coming to your base, it's fine, you can play anywhere if they don't have your flag taken yet. But as soon as they take your flag, you always want to be 2 floors ahead of them. So if they're up on 4th floor and they're like frozen on 4th floor with the flag, you can play in spawn. If they are on 3rd floor, you want to be on ground, right? If they're coming down to spawn, you want to be out middle. You want to be like out past the bridge, like where the PK would be, like over by the ladders to under, so that you can watch under and you can catch any scorers that might be cading the bridge or like returning from their base. And the idea behind that is, like I mentioned in the basics video, if they go under, you can sit on this side of the rocks, and then whenever they clear it, you can just collapse the tunnel, right? They clear it, you collapse the tunnel. They clear it, you collapse the tunnel. And if they try to run through, you kill them. And if they die in the rocks, as long as you keep the tunnel collapsed, the flag automatically safes. So basically, your job is to make sure that once they get out, they can't score through under. And your PK's job is to make sure that once they get out, they can't score through the bridge. Um, and that's it. That's defense 3v3 in a nutshell. Very basic defense. When you get better at a head mage, you don't have to play as far ahead, and you can use your cades more and play in the spawn more. But for a new head mage, I suggest what I was talking about. So next thing would be scorers. So scorers, um, their job is pretty basic, pretty simple. Usually, you have buckets, right? And explodes. You use your explodes to get up and down. And the main things with scores are you basically have to play as a team. So you need to use passing, right? uh, Passing is very important, and you need to use your brain. Like you need to use positioning too. So, like for instance, if you have two teammates, like if you have two teammates up here, right, on 3rd floor, fighting with the PK and the 3rd mage, you don't want to come up here if they already like are taking the flag and stuff, unless they're about to die. What you want to do is like you either want to A, clear spawn, or B, maybe you want to set some cades up on ground like this so that they can go back ladder without contention, so like they can't call the tunnel to the ahead mage. Or maybe their ahead mage isn't playing far enough ahead and he's being disrespectful, and you want to be like over here at the doors waiting to cade him off at big doors, but I don't suggest it. The best way to do that is to be at the bridge, right? So because they can't like if you go big doors, they can go small doors. If you go to the bridge, they have to go to the bridge. There's nothing else they can do, right? The other idea is if your team gets out and goes under ahead of the ahead mage, and they're in front of them, the ahead mage is going to come and he's going to rope this wall like this. And you're going to want to cade small doors. One of the rules that I didn't mention before that's an in-game, it's like a courtesy thing, is you don't pre-cade these doors. So you're not allowed to just like set these cades at the doors and then just like run off and leave them here. So if there's going to be cades at these doors, you have to have a teammate standing by them. That's like a courtesy rule. And the idea is if you get under, you can cade these doors like this, and you can also, if in case they rope, you can cade the top of the ladder, right? And then your teammate can come up from under, and he can come up from under and then go up back ladder, and then they can't get any casts on him, and you basically just get a free score. So that's pretty much it. Scoring is pretty basic. You can bucket explode stuff, yada yada, right? One humidify. That's basically it. But the main thing in scoring is to make sure that your teamwork is good, your passing is good, and that you're playing intelligently with where you're standing. Because most scorers, almost all scorers in casual 3v3, they stack up on top of each other like idiots, and then there's nobody to play with the guys that, because like I said, the defense, if they're smart, they're going to space out, right? And I just explained how they play. The PK is one floor ahead, the head mage is two floors ahead, the PK watches the bridge, the head mage watches under, the third mage is on top of your ass. So if all three of you are trying to beat the third mage 1 versus 3, then the PK is playing 1 versus 0, and the head mage is playing 1 versus 0, and you're never going to get past them because they have nobody's playing against them. They just you're letting them win for free, right? You don't have anybody like clearing the spawn on the PK. You don't have anybody cading the head mage out, so it's very easy for the defense to just zero you because nobody delegates like where they stand like they should when they score. But that's pretty much it for